Hi again, fellow researchers. I just wanted to add another quick video to kind of supplement the last one that we looked at. And remember, we're beginning with the premise that Jesus kept his word in the first century when he said all of these things will happen and all the prophecies will be fulfilled within his generation. So now we have to look at the world in a different perspective because we've been lied to by the controllers and they've had several hundred years to cover it all up. But there's just too much evidence out there that shows that not only did the tribulation happen, but the millennial reign afterwards also has happened. So just looking, this is the image that the controllers would have you believe that the people lived like in the Middle Ages. Now, how did these people build thousands of miles of canal systems that we've already looked at? Okay, with a decimated population of uneducated, untrained farmers and small boat fishermen, how did the greatest infrastructure imaginable become reality? So the famous saying that you didn't build that really is true in this instance. Now, remembering that water, cymatics, frequencies, vibrations, there's technologies that we still don't know how to use today. Or if we do know how to use it, it's simply kept from the mainstream population. So here's some structures that were built on islands before boats and vessels were even capable of carrying the materials to build these islands or these structures even existed, supposedly. The sophisticated canals were the main communications for cities in Europe and Asia. Just think of a country like Holland and the fact that you can't even duplicate the canals that were built hundreds of years ago. Here are some landscapes in different countries with details where palaces were built around moats or they had actual water systems that brought water to their doors. And again, it was basically a skillfully crafted energy gathering structure that operated as generators, capacitors, and it simply have been repurposed now. These buildings all around the world have been repurposed as castles, palaces, government buildings, libraries, schools, a number of different things. In December of 2018, there was basically a count of 3,391 cathedral status buildings around the world, and mostly in Roman Catholic populations. But there's also tens of thousands of other type structures that also were built. Now here's some more castles and cathedrals and palaces that we're told are inherited. In other words, they don't show you construction pictures. They don't even say that they built it. They say that they were founded, but they were actually inherited from the previous civilization during the millennial kingdom era. Now, just to get an idea what the population was, in 1377, the first poll tax was levied in England. And what they found out was at that time, there was 30 cathedral towns and cities. Now, I'll give you some examples. Hereford Cathedral was constructed in 1079. The population in 1377 was 1,903 people. That cathedral was 342 feet long. The Winchester Cathedral, 558 feet long, population in 1377 was 1,440 people. The Ely Cathedral, it was started in 1083 AD, population 1,772 people. It was 536 feet long. And one last example was the Leicester Cathedral, again began building in 1086. Population in 1377 was 2,100 people, and that building was 220 feet tall. Now, just imagine, is it even within the realm of possibility that the people in 1086, 1250 built these cathedrals? The answer, of course, is no, it's not possible. Here's some pretty amazing buildings. It is believed the principal method used to distribute and use of acoustics, vibrational frequency, and sympathetic resonance were means of actually building and constructing these buildings. If you notice, there are either moats, lakes, rivers, or canals that are around these buildings. Now, one interesting fact about these monumental cathedrals was they were never meant for religious purposes, nor even an expression of faith by the builders. Religion, in the institutional sense, was created by the controllers in order to control the population and used as a deception to justify the old world infrastructure. In other words, they simply told us that, yeah, the people all gathered together to build these religious buildings so they could worship their gods. Now, in Milan, there's a cathedral that started building, or they tell us, in 1386, and the final details were completed in 1965. So the implication is, okay, well, they had power tools then. The problem is, who prepared the groundwork and excavated the footings back in the 14th century? Where did they get the concrete to lay the foundation? Where did they get the sculptured block, the marble, the granite, the wood, the metal for the domes, etc.? In other words, they had no way of bringing this material in, nor did they have any way of constructing these buildings. Here's a look at some of the underground water tunnels. Many of these former, what are actually energy gathering structures, have huge underground reservoirs, cavities or cisterns for storing water, some of which have been drained. Probably most have been drained. Some of these underground, what are so-called Victorian underground reservoirs, stretch for miles and miles beneath our cities. So, taking a look at some of these underground, what are actually magnificent structures in their own right, the key to free energy was water. The underground tunnels supplied the buildings above the ground with plenty of energy to keep them going. Well, you can understand that the controllers did not want you to have free energy. They wanted you to use dirty things like petroleum and gas and coal and use that in such a way that they could control every type of technology that was used. The entire medieval watercourse grid was destabilized and deactivated by the controllers somewhere between the 17th and 19th century. The people who inhabited the earth during the millennial kingdom possessed an understanding and even divine knowledge of the true nature and potential of God's miraculous creation. At some point, those who constructed this impossible system seemingly just disappeared. But as Bible reading, scripture knowledge people, we know what happened. After the 1,000-year reign, the saints and Jesus with the angels went back to their kingdom, and they were then loosing or letting loose Satan for his little season, however long that is going to take. So take a look at some of these Indian step wells that they've uncovered, and this last one was uncovered in 1980. They're basically constructed with this precise and complex geometric patterns. And you can see the intricacy and the absolute engineering that it took to build these is phenomenal. It's amazing how these are uncovered. In other words, they don't construct them. They basically dig the soil and find them. And now we're looking and we're trying to figure out exactly how this was used. But when you see the construction, they're basically ordinary men with picks and shovels that are digging these out of the ground. So one final piece of information, just to look at how beautiful these landscapes were. And they still are, the ones that they've left intact. But of course, in 1773, something called the Enclosure Act happened in England. And 6,800,000 acres, or approximately 1/5 of England and Wales, were repurposed and changed. And something called the Earth Mover was how they destroyed the information and changed most of this landscape so you couldn't see the beauty that had been made. The amazing part is this also happened in the United States, in America, on a scale that is literally goes off the charts. So we don't know exactly how to explain this. We just know that Jesus said that he was coming back in the first century, which means there was a tribulation followed by a millennial kingdom, and we're putting those facts together. God bless you for now.